The vampires meeting Damon, finding out he's real, is sort of like meeting a god in their world. Literally, their religious texts speak of Damon in that position of the great one that has come and is basically shining above them. I see him, this glowing figure. But of all the immortals, they've formed, basically this whole religion around him. Bruno, you play Kaymorn, who's the vampire preceptor, the equivalent of the Pope in the vampire world. How do you feel about the fact that vampires have their own religion, or any religion in the Everdark? Some of humanity's major religions are focused on the next life. Well, of course, vampires live forever and are escaping whatever comes after. Because remember, Kaymorn is a Callie. He knows that there is something after this life, but he chooses not to go there.
I feel it's a little unfair that you guys had a really enjoying conversation about sex, and I have to tackle religion in my very first question, and bound to piss some people off.
What are you talking about? We can have fun talking about religion, can't we?
I mean, religion to me is a collective panic about death. So it's a little odd that vampires who have, they've conquered death, have to have a religion. But religion is about finding answers. People create stories to provide answers for the world they live in, and vampires are no different to that.
I think Kaymorn would actually agree with you about this all being stories. He doesn't have any faith at all. He has knowledge, and he actually sees religion as a way to control. Because remember, he's sort of like the council. Yeah. Damon, no, you're not coming back because I'm in control here.
Control was going to be one of the words I used. It was going to be religion as control and subjugation.
No. I mean, Kaymorn, I am sure that there will be some people who are offended by it, but I think that definitely how it's been used in Everdark, religion is a method of control. We also have the vampires. A lot of them are from a much earlier time, right? Where the church especially had a lot more sway than some would say it does now. And religion's just played a larger role versus now, I think, atheism. I am sort of more of an atheist myself, but atheism has more of a role now. People feel more like this, although they may not admit it. Kaymorn especially, he uses religion like the opiate of the masses, I think. And what's interesting to me about him is at the same time, he actually, as we will discover, has done very dangerous things to find out answers about what's after. He doesn't want to have faith. He wants to know, and he wants to control it, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting things about Kaymorn is that he has a really high level of introspection and curiosity about the world around him, and he doesn't accept anything at face value. So no. I can see why he's a popular character.
Yes. No, and he really, how shall I say it? He says, and what others are afraid to say, but maybe think. He's just very much that. He also, I believe, feels the fragility of society and why religion is necessary. Because if people believed as he believes, that is sort of like how you put the pieces on the board and that there is no greater purpose, maybe there would be a lot more violence, a lot more chaos.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want that.
Yeah. In reality, that's how it came about 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, 600 years ago. It was society started questioning things, and those with the power, the ability, because you had to read and write to be able to pull it down, they went, no, we're not having any of this anymore. And, here's the text. This is what it is.
Yeah, because he's 1,000 years old. So he comes from that time frame, like back in the day. And he knows how that's been used in the past. And so he's artfully used it to put himself in power and keep things going. He's not a hypocrite, though, but he does say some shocking things, as we'll find out, to those who actually believe. And let's talk to the person who's playing a believer. Jay, you play Arceus, a vampire confessor. And in contrast to Bruno and Kaymorn, he believes. In fact, when he sees Damon, he practically falls to his knees even though he knows that, for example, Damon is fallible too. So what did you bring to it? What were you thinking about it when this, about religion and vampires? Were you surprised it was there? Were you surprised that your character was going to be basically a priest, a berserker priest, no less?
I think the word belief popped into my head the second you asked this question. And I feel like that's what Arceus has is a very strong belief, and a very strong belief in the community. To me, that's what religion kind of is this community of people that are like-minded, that gather together to congregate, I guess. Whether it's for better or for worse, that's up to people's individual opinions. But I feel like Arceus's point of view is kind of that thing of not quite can't we all work together, but if we're all this one kind of person that is oppressed by these other people or looked down upon or feared by all these people, or as some believe, some vampires believe, better than humans, then why can't we all kind of band together and form this community? Theater communities, we have our acting communities, we have our voice acting communities. They're there to support you and help you believe that what you're doing is for a reason. It's not just shouting into the ether. We're not just some chaotic speck of life on a tiny, tiny planet in a tiny, tiny universe. There's some reason for it all.
Not all the time, Jay. I mean, I've certainly had some, I don't mean to argue with you.
That's right.
I'm just in one of those moods.
Oh, good.
Where, our communities can be amazing and can be super supportive, but they can also be incredibly damaging and unsupportive. It really depends on where you end up and who you're chatting with, kind of exactly like religion. Really. It's the same
exactly.
situation.
For better or for worse. If you're a toxic person, you'll gravitate towards other toxic people and create a toxic community that you'll support each other's beliefs, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, unfortunately.
I think the irony of the parallel between Caemorn and Arceus is that Arceus is actually seen as the conscience, especially of Balthazar, as we'll find out. But also, I think Caemorn has a lot of pain, which we will discover. And he knows when he looks at Arceus, he does not see a fool. He does not see anything like that, like an innocent. He does see a genuinely good man or good vampire, but he's like, that's not what I could ever be, nor want to be. And he just assumes he will never be accepted by Arceus, even though I think Arceus would be actually more open to him than he thinks. Caemorn is that man behind the curtain. And he's like, once you've been there, you can't just believe that's just not something that happens.
And Arceus believes wholeheartedly what he's doing is right and true and good. I assume that Caemorn feels the same way, that what he's doing is right, the right way to do things, and absolutely the way to be and the way to go.
He does, because Caemorn knows the price of chaos.
Yeah.
He really does. The war that they speak about is that price, and he will never allow it to happen again. Mm-hmm. So he might be ruthless. He is ruthless, but he is doing it for a reason. Is he some kind of pristine slate? No. But he definitely thinks his way is better. He has some very strong thoughts about Damon, as we'll find out. And he may not be altogether wrong also, which is always interesting, because Damon is our hero and the one we want to win. But let's put it this way. Damon's powerful enough that if he decided to go bad, we would all be in trouble, basically. There's no one to stand against him, as we'll discover in a weird way.
I mean, I love the idea that Caemorn and more, I read his scenes and his chapters and about him, he's a real truth teller, and truth tellers are very rarely popular.
Yeah, he's definitely not. He's very lone. And he thinks he's going to be alone for that truth telling, but he'll be surprised maybe.
I'm going to weigh in as the god to say I found when I first read these chapters how interesting it would be for the creature that is this apparent god, how they take the worship. Because there's a difference between belief and worship. Some of these characters know that these immortals exist or existed. And what happens when the creature that you believe in, that you worship, shows up and it's not at all what you thought? It doesn't.
No, he's not.
It doesn't act, speak, or espouse the virtues that you were taught by your particular group. And how does that affect someone who has deep faith in those ideas. So I'm hoping everyone is looking forward, as I am, to where that goes, of what happens if your God showed up and said, I don't know who told you that, but that's not who I am.
Yes. And that's a huge thing. I mean, Balthazar is a real disbeliever. He does not like this idea of a king, and yet he comes around. But as we'll really see, Camorn maybe sees Damon more clearly, interestingly enough, but in a different way. He basically says, yes, because Damon says, I am king, and that means something. That's just not a title. That's like who and what he is at his core. And it's used for laughter sometimes, but if you notice, a lot of the characters, even Julian, is like, he can't be as powerful as he's intimating. He's more powerful than he's intimating, actually. They have no idea, and they will find out what that is. But if he doesn't hold himself back, and maybe if he doesn't have things like Julian in his life, or, someone to basically counter him, it could go badly. He could go to a dark place, which is, maybe we should all be glad he went to sleep rather than doing something else.
Especially as he is not human and was never human.
No.
If some greater being showed up and realized, hey, these humans, maybe they're not all that. Maybe I'll pick dolphins next time. Vampire dolphin spinoff.
Dolphin spin-off of Everdark dolphin swimming. It's funny because Everdark is the first in a series. Everdark Academy comes after this, and that's actually dealing with bringing back some other immortals, but also the cost of the war, and what do these people want to accept Damon as God again? Do they want this? But really, do they have any choice about it? Because that's another thing that's going to be, problematic. Damon can allow them to have choice, i.e. he cannot do what he's capable of doing. They reject him. But in truth, he could just make it so they had no choice, as we'll find out in some scenes coming up with him and Balthazar, which is going to be interesting about this. So, he is a good God right now. He's a benevolent God, but he doesn't necessarily need to be. And as being non-human, he might find something that we find morally repugnant not that way. I hoped you liked this behind-the-scenes discussion with the cast and crew of the Everdark podcast. If you want to join the conversation, come to YouTube and tell us what you think in the comments. And just so you know, I'm not the only one reading the comments. The entire cast is too, and they're very eager and excited to hear from you. If you are already listening on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe to get notified when the next episode of Everdark comes out.